Around 2% of flights in the United States gets canceled every year according to the Department of Transportation, and I've had the wonderful privilege of being on 3 of those. There are roughly 3 different scenarios you can be in if your flight gets canceled, and I'm going to go over all 3 of those as we go through each one of these stories. I was on a business trip going home from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. So I was at the gate about 30 minutes before my flight, just taking it easy, getting ready to go home, and I get I overhear the announcement over the PA system at the gate, and the gate attendant says, "Hey, flight's been canceled." So this was a last minute cancellation, very much of a pain, and the first thing that you would think of to do at the gate is go to the ticketing agent at the gate. They usually get bombarded with like everyone at the gate because as soon as a flight gets canceled, they're like the first line of defense. And everyone wants answers and to get rebooked, figure out what's going on, all that stuff. And they're also usually trying to figure all that stuff out too. What you usually want to do is go find a customer service representative for the airline that you're flying. A lot of airlines usually have customer service representative desks in the terminal area, and you have to go and find the one corresponding to your airline. So it's better to go and talk to the customer service representative usually if the ticketing agent doesn't give you an announcement as to any potential rebookings, what the situation is, because they're usually trying to figure out exactly what's going on. So they've got a lot on their plate. Go and talk to the customer service rep so that they can go and help you directly. Usually after some time, the ticketing agent, after they've confirmed everything has been canceled, they don't really, have any more insight after that. They're usually going to tell you to go to the customer service desk anyway. So the faster you get there, the quicker, you're going to be in line, you'll be ahead of other people, etc. I did this for my flight, so I immediately went to the customer service desk. However, there was a decent line there already because not only had my flight gotten canceled, but a whole lot of other flights, so it was kind of a mess that night. So the line was already fairly long when I got there, and by the time I left, which I'll tell you about in a second, it had over doubled in length, and it was insanely long. So as soon as I got in line, the next thing I did was I pulled out my cell phone and I called the customer service number for the airline. Now what I'm trying to do here is to try to have multiple avenues of being able to reach someone, because as soon as you can get a hold of someone, they can go ahead and help you. So if I can get to them on the phone before I get to the front of the line, that's even better. And luckily for me, that was the case. I was able to get a hold of a customer service agent, and looking at several different flight options, I was able to get a flight on literally the last flight out that night, the final seat. She was like, "There's literally one seat available, do you want it?" I was just like, "Yes, book it right now, get me on that flight." And she was able to help me get that last seat on that flight, and as soon as I was able to confirm on my phone that my boarding pass had updated to the new flight, I went out of the line because I was done there, and there was seriously a lot of people in that line. And a lot of them weren't on their phones, or they were just calling loved ones and relatives, just telling them, "Hey, we're gonna be late, delayed, whatever." And I mean, that's a fairly normal response, but at the same time, the faster you can get rebooked onto a flight, the better, because everyone is rebooking, so these flights are gonna start filling up. Now, onto the crazier and more interesting stories. So some of you may have seen my Palm Springs video, which I will leave here. One thing I didn't mention in that video was the crazy drama it took to actually get there. This is my 4-flight cancellation story. So here we start off at the airport, and my wife and I were going to Palm Springs. She had a different flight than me because she was going for business and her flight was full, so I had to book a different flight. Whatever, it's fine. She already has her boarding pass and everything, so she's good to go. She goes to her gate. I, on the other hand, did not have my boarding pass because my app would not give it to me. It told me to go to the ticketing counter, and I was like, okay, whatever. So I go to the ticketing counter to go print it out, and the kind lady there just looks at me and tells me, "Hey, your flight's been canceled." I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. It's 9 a.m. I'm sure there's tons of other flights and options and stuff, so just what can you do for me? So my flight already had a layover in, of course, Chicago O'Hare, and there was basically cancellations out of there because of snow, and this was in February, so it was snowing all over the place. There was actually major storms that day all across the US, and that is why this whole thing is a problem. So I didn't care where my layover was gonna be because I already had one in a terrible airport, so I was just like, just get me somewhere, just what else you got? So she rebooked me on a flight through Denver, and she was like, okay, here's a flight through Denver, times are relatively similar, still get you there around the same time. And I was like, okay, cool, that's fine. So she she prints the boarding pass, and basically she gives it to me, and as soon as she gives it to me, she starts looking a little bit, and then she was like, "Wait, this flight's canceled too." I was like, okay, cool, this has to be some sort of joke, but okay, whatever, we'll deal with it. I'm still here. She can still get me another flight, whatever. So she looks on her thing and she looks and finds the next available flight going through Newark. And as soon as she said Newark, so I already knew that Newark had snow and some issues because I have relatives that live in New Jersey, and then they told me, like, you know, they've been telling me all morning, like, yeah, it's been snowing and it's pretty rough out there. So I looked at the lady and I was like, okay, what are the chances that this flight's gonna get canceled? Because I know that it's snowing there. So she looks into it a little bit more, looks at, you know, the airport and kind of the status of the delays and cancellations, and she was like, okay, it's pretty high. And I was like, okay. She said if not canceled, then at least majorly delayed, because they were experiencing a lot of delays that day. So I was like, okay, let's look at other options. So then I get rebooked to Atlanta, and the flight outgoing to Atlanta had gotten delayed, and basically she wasn't sure that I'd be able to make the connection because the connection was like super close. And if you know anything about Atlanta's airport, it's really big. Depending on where your connecting flights and stuff are, like, it could take you a very long time to get there. So with the delays of the outgoing flight, she was like, okay, I don't think you'll be able to make the connection. Let's look into another one. I was like, okay, still, you know, what other cities we got? So she was like, okay, found you one, goes through LAX. And I was like, okay, LAX, sunny, right? And she was like, yeah, there's no issues at LAX. You should be perfectly fine, no delays. And I was like, okay, cool. She was like, downside, it's like a 4-hour layover. At this point, you know, I'd just be happy to get there, because she was like, okay, basically your only other options are like, you know, flights the next day. Like, this was basically the only option. And I was like, okay, is there a catch? And she was like, well, so it's out of another airport that's 40 minutes away, and the flight leaves in an hour. I was like, okay. Quickly thought, you know, like with my 10 seconds of processing, I was like, okay, that means I have 20 minutes to basically get through the airport security and everything, get to the flight. 40 minutes away means I have to leave now. And I was just like, you know what, like, let's just do it. So she's printing the boarding pass, and as she's printing the boarding pass, I go ahead and open the Uber app and I grab an Uber, and basically Uber gets there super quick, which is awesome. And I get in the car as quickly as I can. I just tell the dude, I'm like, I need to get to this airport, because, you know, the guy was already a little weirded out that the fact that I was going from one airport to another, because, you know, he probably thought I screwed up and went to the wrong airport, but no, you know, I was just like, hey, wrong airport, like different airport, flight cancellations, blah, blah, blah. And the dude felt super bad for me. He basically just got me there as quickly as he could, you know, still while being relatively safe and everything, which I really appreciated. Basically, I get there little under 40 minutes and I'm like rushing, because if you know anything about flights, basically 30 minutes before the flight, they start boarding already. So people are already starting to board, and I'm like just arriving at the airport. I'm rushing. I've never been to this airport before, so I'm just rushing. I'm going through like security as quickly as I can, and basically I make it to the flight and I'm like the last person to board. Like, I'm like running in there, gate attendant, like, you know, she's like looking around, like looking for, you know, the last passenger, and she sees me run in and she knows. She's just like, that's the guy. And I get there, scan the thing, thanks, boom, in, like in the plane, sit down, and basically shut the door, plane flies out. That was insanely stressful, the whole process, because that whole time I didn't really have time to process or really figure out anything. It was just, I was very, very grateful that the ticketing agent was there and that I didn't have to wait through a crazy line to talk to her, which was super helpful. But basically, if you're able to get a hold of someone physically, so if you're not in the airport yet or not through security, there's a lot of ticketing agents and all that stuff, so hopefully they can help you. And in my case, they were able to help me just rebook a billion times. But we got there, Palm Springs happened, it was super fun, as you can see from the other video if you want to check that out. But yeah, it's a lot of drama in getting to Palm Springs. So again, if you're waiting in line for a ticketing agent and there's a lot of people and it's going to be a decent wait, because sometimes there is, then you want to go ahead and call customer service on your phone as quickly as possible. So basically, do whatever you can to get a hold of someone as quickly as possible. It's kind of, you know, there's this trend here. Now we're moving on to the third story, and this one takes place while I was still at home the night before my trip. So here I'm going to Vegas with my friends, and we all had this trip planned for like 6-7 months out. It was supposed to be, you know, it was supposed to be cool, chill, stress-free, you know. No, out the window, because the night before the flight, we're, you know, everyone's packing, everyone's getting ready and stuff like that. And it was probably around like, I don't know, 9:30 at night, finishing up packing, and then we all get the same email like, hey, flight's been canceled, no information. Our group, DM thread thing just starts blowing up. Oh my goodness, we're all just frantically messaging each other. We start a video call real quick. We're like, hey guys, what's going on? What do we do? So my friends had booked their flights through Expedia and the airline directly, and I had booked mine through my credit card reward points. So we were flying American Airlines, and basically all my friends were able to rebook their flight through their app. And I opened my app and it's like, you can't rebook through here because you booked through like a third party or something. It said some sort of thing. And I was like, they booked through a third party too. Basically, something with the credit card, I wasn't able to book or rebook the flight through the app. So I had to go ahead and call them. And at this point, all the other flights to Vegas were starting to fill up because, again, everyone's starting to rebook, and my friends had already rebooked flights together going to Vegas, and I'm like the odd one out where I know the flight number and I'm just like trying to call customer service. So basically, in short, we're on the phone with the credit card company, with the airline, and then chatting with the airline through text. So the first thing that goes through is the credit card company, and they tell me they can get me booked on a different flight. I tell them, okay, go ahead, let's book this different one. Find me what you can find, because they were cycling through things, and a lot of the flights that I wanted were booked. So then they were like, okay, we can get you on this one for later in the day or something like that. It was like landing at like 9 p.m. when I was originally supposed to be there at 11 a.m. So it was super late, but I was just like, at this point, I'll take what I can get. They go ahead and they book me on that. If you book through the credit card company, they don't have direct access to all the stuff that, the airlines do. So what they did was they canceled my previous flight and then they booked me on a new one. The problem with that is that if you book a flight the night before you're leaving, it's expensive. So they book me on this flight and then they're like, okay, it's gonna be $800, like on top of what I had already paid. And I was like, $800, that's more than what I paid for these tickets like originally. But because they were literally booking a new flight, it was super expensive. But at this point, they had already canceled my other flight, so I didn't really have a choice. Let me get that so I have something, and then let me go fix this with the airline. Then I get a hold of the airline through the text chat thing. I get cycled through like 3 different people, because the first few people, let's just say they weren't very helpful. They didn't really seem to care or really understand the situation that I was going through, and they just kind of kept passing me to other people. Then I get a hold of this lady on the text chat who's like, I'm just gonna say she's like the most helpful person I've ever experienced through like customer support. She like listened to what I had to say, understood the problem, and was like actually seemed to care about trying to help me get my situation resolved. I was explaining to her like, hey, I have reservations to restaurants and I had all these plans and things, it'd be nice to be able to get there earlier. Credit card company seemed to have screwed up my flight, like all this stuff, like, can you fix that problem and then, help me out? And she was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. What she did was she canceled the flight that the credit card company made, brought back my old flight, the canceled one, and then rebooked me onto a different flight. And the flight was for like 8 p.m. that night or something like that, like landing time. I was supposed to be there at 11 a.m., but take what I can get. She was just like, I just want to book the first thing I saw so that you had something, and let's work backwards. I was like, okay, cool. So she was then able to get me on a flight that landed at 6 p.m. And this whole time, all of it was through layovers, which I hate. Our original flight was not supposed to be a layover. It was supposed to be a direct flight, but at this point, there were only layover flights, and we were going through different cities and stuff like that. My friends ended up going through Phoenix, I think, and then we switched a few times. She was able to go from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m., and then she was like, okay, got you this other one through Dallas, Fort Worth at, landing at like 4 p.m. We get the 4 p.m. flight, and I was just like, that's amazing. And she was like, she spent probably at least another like 20 minutes or so, like flipping through things and trying to get me a better flight. Like, I really, really appreciated that. And she wasn't able to get me anything, but like the time and the effort that she spent, she was like constantly updating me on what she was looking at, like through the text chat. So like, it was basically like the most helpful experience, almost as if she was sitting there like with me, like going through this. And it was super helpful. Me and my wife were just like, this person is amazing. So afterward, after the chat thing finishes, they give you that little like, would you like to do the survey thing? And no one ever does that. But like, I actually filled out the survey for her. It was just like super, super helpful. Other people weren't super helpful, but like, she was amazing. Like, she needs a raise. I'm getting stressed just thinking about all this. But like, anyway, we were able to get there. We just lost a few hours of time in Vegas that day and about a year off of our lives from all the stress. But we made it. So in short, if you are dealing with a cancellation, try to get a hold of someone as quickly as possible. The sooner you get a hold of someone, the sooner you can rebook that or utilize the airline's website or app if that allows you to rebook quicker as well. Basically, the quicker you rebook, the quicker you'll actually be able to get, a seat on a flight or have more available flights, at your disposal, as opposed to the longer you wait or, the longer it takes, other people are going to be rebooking. So you're going to be losing all those chances that you have to get a more decent flight, and then you'll end up, having to fly the next day or something like terrible. It's more important to talk to the airlines than to other people. Like if you book through your credit card and it tells you you need to call your credit card company, then just go through the airlines. It's going to be much better than going directly through the credit card company or whatever else, third-party platform that you use to book your tickets. As soon as the flight gets canceled, it does become a race to get, rebookings as quickly as possible. So you want to win that race, so you want to make sure you know all your tools at your disposal. Finding physical agents, using your phone, calling them, text chats through the website, like use everything that you can. So airlines can rebook you directly onto other flights, but they also can give you other perks like cash back, or most of the time they do it as in the form of credit toward future flights. But if you don't necessarily need to be there like that day, if you're still at home, for example, and you could delay your flight by a day or two or something like that, then let them know, because they probably can give you some sort of, cash back or benefit or reward or something for being able to be more flexible than the people who have to be on the next available flight, that kind of a thing. If your flight gets canceled and you get stranded at the airport, or there's literally no available flights or anything like that, the airline is responsible for giving you some sort of compensation. So speak with them and they'll usually be able to get you at least a hotel or some sort of money towards like spending for food and things like that. So make sure you do talk with them one way or another. The credit card they use to book the flight may also have travel reimbursements for, situations like this if your flight gets canceled. Some of them have things like protection if your bags get lost or anything like that as well, and they give you money towards getting food or hotels or whatever it may be if you are in a different country or something like that. Make sure you know your credit card perks too. And most of the time this comes with travel credit cards, which are like the more high-end credit cards. So if you just have a very, very basic card, probably won't have that. But if you have a more high-end credit card or a travel credit card or something like that, then look into your perks and make sure you know them before you go travel, so that if anything comes up, you know what you're getting yourself into. Ultimately, I really hope that you don't ever have to deal with a canceled flight. It's super stressful and annoying. But in the event that you do, I hope that these scenarios were helpful and just kind of gives you an idea of kind of how to react in different scenarios to flight cancellations depending on where you are. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful and I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions or you have tips, suggestions, tricks, whatever it may be, leave them in the comment section down below, because I am more than interested in just continuing to learn more. And when I inevitably run into another flight cancellation, because my luck is great, then yeah, I'm always looking for more suggestions, more tips, etc. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.